Wow, way better role. Way better.
Like, love it. I'm like, ready?
Okay. This is Haley. And this is Bailey. And you're listening to Text Me When You Land.
It's season 5. I can't believe we're already on season 5. That's crazy.
It's so crazy. I kind of feel like we've been doing a podcast for a long time, but then also I feel like it hasn't been that long. I guess it has, over a year? Almost a year and a half?
Yeah, it would be 2 years in November.
Oh, wow. So that is a long time. I feel like
That is a
we've
long
learned
time.
so much from doing our podcast. Like, I feel
I
like at
know.
first we were so nervous doing it, and we loosened up so much and got better going back and forth. There's so much to learn just sitting down and actually having conversations like this. Like, obviously we talk all the time, but to sit down and be able to say what we meant without especially me, overthinking it. Like, I remember that was a huge thing I feel like I grew during this, was just being able to talk without it being super stressful and overthinking what you're saying and getting it to come out right. Because sometimes it's you
So
really
true.
overthink what you're saying. You're like, wow, that didn't make sense. And we've gotten better at not taking as many takes. I feel like we used to have to, at least not when I was editing, I'd be like, wow, that was hard. That was hard to edit. Now it's easy because we just got it down.
It's true. I think the conversations come more naturally, and especially because we've been, since we switched it to doing podcasts weekly, which I think has been so fun. It also helps keep the rhythm flowing. So, welcome to season 5 of Text Me When You Land. I'm Haley.
And I'm Bailey.
So, I found an interesting statistic, and we were just talking a little bit about this, but it's been a huge topic that I've seen all over social media lately, and I kind of want to discuss it. But it says, on average, 86.8% of injections, meaning like fillers, Botox, are female patients, while 13.2% are male patients, which is approximately a 7-to-1 ratio. So for every 7 women getting fillers and Botox or whatever, there's one male getting it.
That is
So.
so interesting. I mean, I could totally see that. And I feel like it is so much more common to hear women talking
Mm-hmm.
about getting Botox, getting filler. I feel like I've heard some men, but definitely not as common as I hear women talking about it.
Yeah. I feel like when we get to a certain point in age, like we were talking, how women start to do it more as like a maintenance thing to keep up, especially if they're in their 20s and 30s. But then if people are starting it in their 40s and 50s and 60s, it's more intense stuff like with facelifts and actual surgeries and stuff like that. But like as it's a little bit younger, I mean, I think more younger generations do nose jobs too. Which, if you actually have you seen how they do nose jobs? It's
No,
kind of like
I feel like it would be so scary to watch. I feel like that sounds so
I
painful.
watched one on YouTube because I was so curious. I'm so gross. But they cut this part right here in between your nose, that little like part that divides the nostrils, and then they pull your whole nose back, and then they like break it with a hammer, basically. Like and it depends
Ow.
on the nose jobs, I guess. Not every nose job is performed the same, I don't think, but um it was it was creepy, but that explains why I'm like, how do they do it without having a huge scar on their face? And that's
Yeah,
because it's right here in between, and you wouldn't even notice when they do it. I'm like, wow, that's
ouch.
impressive.
That
I've
sounds
definitely
so
been intrigued
painful.
with nose jobs, but I don't know if I'm like that intrigued to like full on going break your nose.
Yeah, it sounds so painful. It's also a pretty intense recovery.
Yeah, I've
It is
heard that it
not
can
low
be.
key. I feel like
Yeah,
you have a big, thing on your face for a little bit. You're really bruised up. Your eyes, under your eyes get bruised. It's definitely an intense recovery process.
yeah, it really is. So, in regards to the whole fillers and Botox, what's your take on how more women get it done than men?
I mean, I think that probably does come from just society and the pressures that are put on women. And I feel like, yeah, we do put it on ourselves in some capacity and what we hold ourselves and our standards to. But I think it also comes from what's on social media, what's in magazines, what's on TV. Like all of that is constantly being fed to us. And that becomes the norm in your head of what it should be like. And I think nowadays we have a lot of things that can be preventatives, like facials and different treatments you can do to avoid that in the long run. And maybe not avoid because you're making the choice to do it. It's not like you have to do it, but being able to be on top of it versus I feel like our parents age more. One, you laid out in the sun a ton, I feel like it wasn't as known to, like, not be out in the sun, which is, like, causes wrinkles and all that, and I feel like they just didn't know. Like, they didn't know what to do, and maybe it wasn't an option to do preventative stuff as much, so then you end up doing it more. But, I mean, I guess we'll see how many of our friends do it too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that for me, like, I'm not for or against it. It's just like personal preference. Like, it's for me, I think it's really sad that women feel this pressure to have to age naturally, even if they want to do it for themselves, because they feel better in the end because they look better. And I'm like, but we were intended to age like this, and the world is what's made it so we don't. And if you actually like stem it back to the core, like it really does come from an insecurity, I think, or preventing an insecurity. And I just like, I wish everyone could just know that, like, no, like you can age naturally. You can do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing it if you feel better. Like, I think it's great. But at the same time, I just want them to know, like, you don't need to do it. You look great with or without it.
I think there's also so many things that we are insecure about, and I feel like maybe that doesn't even come, and maybe it does, I don't know. And maybe you can help me into this one. That come from like, okay, I'm gonna use my tooth as an example. Like, I didn't have a tooth right here. I made like little vlogs, so I am gonna post about it and you'll see. But like to me, like I was just born without a tooth, and maybe because everybody has, all their teeth, or I don't know, but I was super insecure about it, and I wanted to deal with it, and I ended up, like widening the space and getting an implant put in and all of that, where I feel like some things like nose jobs, for example, is like if you broke your nose or you did something where like it makes you insecure. I don't know, do you feel that goes to like society and that stuff, or do you think that comes down to just like something maybe, that
No,
do you know what I'm saying? Kind of
no.
like you still are
No, I know
doing
exactly what
different
you mean.
work.
No, I don't think that comes from society. I think we all come with our own insecurities without even realizing it. Like, I remember the first thing I was insecure about when I was in 5th grade, like when I really started to notice my body from everybody else's, and it was my I don't know if I want to point this out, but it was my
I mean, I
knees.
just
Like I
I just
was
pointed out my tooth,
I
so
know, but it was like I was so insecure about my knees, and I don't know why. It was just like they're just a little bit bigger than most women, and it was something I was so like, paranoid about to the point where I wouldn't even wear skirts, and that's not something no one pointed that out. Nobody never saw anyone on TV, say, "Oh, your knees are fat," or whatever, or "Your knees are large," it's not like that, and so it's definitely we all have our own things, like you said, if someone breaks their nose, needs to get their nose fixed, that's fine, and some
yeah,
people, they do break their nose, and they're like, "I don't care," and that's
yeah.
fine, but I
I
think
think
that
it is very
if you're, like,
personal,
yeah, if you're
personal
doing it, I
preference.
think because, like, someone pointed it out to you, and then you're like, "Oh, well, maybe I should pay attention to that," It's like, "No, no." That's because they're probably dealing with their own insecurities on that. It's like, don't you have to, like, find that fine line, and then also, I get it, you wanna feel confident, so if it makes you feel confident, go for it, like, nothing is worse than feeling insecure all the time, so if it's makes you feel good.
I was super insecure about my tooth. I mean, you knew that. And like I would like if somebody was sitting on this side, like I would make sure to not talk on that side. After I got it, I was like, oh my God, I feel so much more confident. I would tell people and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even notice. Like I had no idea that you didn't have a tooth. And some people I'm sure did. And I mean, some people were like, oh yeah, I did or whatever. But most people were like, wait, what? Like, which one did you not have? Like it really wasn't noticeable to them. But at the end of the day, it wasn't about anybody else. It was about me and like me feeling confident in the photos I took or in the like being able to talk to the side, like whatever. And like that was such a small thing. And I'm so grateful I was able to deal with it and fix it because not everything you obviously can. But that's like a little like thing. But I feel like, some people do it for because they see like in the magazines and all that, like how perfect people look. I mean, how long were, and I'm sure it still is, but like things were edited so, so, so intensely on these magazines and stuff that like it made the standards so unrealistic.
It's true, and it was speaking of that, so the I guess the face of beauty, which a lot of people look to when it comes to celebrities, I feel like the Kardashians are just plastered on posters for the definition of beauty. And a lot of people will do like what they look like before and what they look like after. And it's like totally different. But it was interesting is I think a week or two ago, Kim had posted a photo of all three of them, all sisters, on the beach. And Courtney just had a baby So she's, postpartum baby. I mean, what, maybe coming up on a year in October, I think is when their baby was born. Um, and the comments on it were like, "Oh, Kim, you did your sister dirty. Like, that's so mean. You posted like a bad photo of Courtney." And Courtney came out in an article and said, actually, no, this is the way my body's intended to look. I had a baby. It gave me my healthy children. I love my body." And it was like, wow, that that right there is what we need more in society. Like, we need more people who aren't afraid to embrace their God-given body and how it's supposed to be in their natural state, because so many women are afraid of the hate and the shame that comes from that. And I think when we see these big celebrities embracing these bodies that they have as they are, it really helps women. I mean, I was telling you about Taylor Swift, and she had posted a photo of Bahamas and she looked incredible. She didn't look over exercised, she didn't look too skinny or too fat. She just looked like a normal girl. And there are so many little girls who look up to her, and it's just like a breath of fresh air to see these celebrities just being normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard because you see like, "Oh, you're so skinny and this is what you look like in a bikini,"
Yeah.
and not everybody's built that way. Like, it just is what it
No.
is. Like, everybody is built very different, and you can, work out as much as you want and do these things, and in the Taylor I just watched a Taylor Swift documentary, but she was talking about how she was like people would make comments, and then she was, like, overworking out, not eating, like, doing all these things and living an unhealthy lifestyle, and how unhappy she was with that, and, like, to just find that balance of it's good to be confident. Like to me, like I feel more confident when I'm working out, but I also don't, like when I'm sitting in a bikini, I mean, like, I feel like anybody sitting in a bikini, like if you take the wrong angle, it's like, wow, like that's what I look like. But no, like okay, let's be
I
honest.
totally
We,
know what you mean. It's
you know
like,
what I mean?
what?
Like you can be like, you can be like, wow, I look so good in that bikini. And then you get a picture, like, wow, that is not what I thought I
It
looked
comes
like.
down
Like,
to
but
lighting and angles, and I'm like,
but to be
"Whoa."
confident in that,
Yeah.
even if it isn't the best picture, and that's something I feel like we're always all working on, and, like,
Mhm.
especially in the industry that we work in, like, always taking pictures of ourselves. Like, I had to catch myself so many times to not pick myself apart. Like, I am a pretty confident, like, in myself. Like, I work on myself very hard to be confident in who I am, but I still find myself being like, "Ooh, like, I could do that better. Ooh, this or that." And it's just, like, you're staring at yourself, and then you're putting it out there to be judged, and I've had people, mostly people with weird accounts, comment on my things and make comments about how I look or this or that, and then it's like, "Wait," and, like, you try to not let that get to you, but then you have
It's
these
hard.
comments and it's like, "Okay, that didn't make me feel very good," even if you
Yeah,
are so
no.
confident in how you look and how you
It
feel and
it doesn't
all
matter,
those
yeah,
things.
it still is like a, "Thanks for reassuring me on my own insecurity," like, that I have, and it doesn't help when it's brought to the surface. It's also, so when you were talking about the whole Taylor Swift thing with her, she feels better when she works out, and, I feel like a lot of people will find that to be true if you are a frequent exerciser or something like that, like, you do, because it releases endorphins and your body starts to feel good, it makes you feel better. But I saw this quote that said, "Sometimes the weight," or how did it go? It was, oh, "Sometimes the weight was supposed to be there when you're eating a normal amount of calories and you're gaining weight. That was like you're supposed to be that weight." And I was like,
Well, so many people compare, and this gets in a whole nother topic, so maybe we don't want to dive too much into this, but like compare eating to working out. Like, oh, if I ate this, I need to do this. And I feel like that's
"Yes,
something like I noticed being like if I'm surrounded by a ton of girls, like hearing those comments, and I just wasn't really, I guess like fortunately I wasn't raised that way, I think is really like my family is just like
that's a huge
we're
part of it."
all not like that. Like we're all very much like, oh, we love food. And like, do we love to work out too? Yes, but those don't go hand in hand. Does that
You
make sense?
you
Like,
were
just because
taught
I
that it
ate that
wasn't
yeah,
correlated.
yeah, and that's a whole nother topic. We don't probably that's for a different time. But
Oh, yeah.
it is, like it's so hard, like, going back to different things you do. It was like, oh, there was a time when big boobs were a thing, so a lot of people got boob jobs, and there's no judgment. Like, people in my family have done stuff, my family's super open about it. Like,
Oh, yeah, I
I'm
know.
very,
Hey, my
like,
family.
there's no judgment, but it's like and then those got a style, and everyone's like, "Well, I kinda wish I didn't do that," and then it's like big butts are in, and then it's like, "Oh, that's not in," and then it's like, "Oh,
Well,
big
they're
lips are in."
trends. They
Actually
co
yeah,
trends. What do? They come and then they go. And so it's
yeah,
like,
and that's
don't
why you
do
have to
something
love
permanent if you're
yeah.
not doing it for the
Do it
right
because you
reasons.
do it because you want to, because you love it and you've
Yes.
always wanted to, or you're very, like you have an insecurity, and that's okay to have it like, it's sad to have insecurities, but it's
It's
also, like, I feel like
normal.
it's normal,
It
and if
is
there's
normal.
something you really want to change and do, like, don't feel guilty about doing that, but I think making sure it's for the right reasons, not because you feel it's a trend or
Yeah,
it's you're gonna do it for
exactly.
somebody else, like, do it for yourself, and that is so important to remember.
It's true. And I think too, like you were saying, a lot of it comes down to your environment around you. Like if there's people who are making you feel like insecure about your insecurities or are how you were raised. Like I was definitely raised in a family that was very aware of what they were eating all the time. And so it made me now hyper aware. And I'm trying to now go throughout my life and be aware, okay, I don't need to be as hyper focused on what I eat as and how I exercise or how I look with facials, whatever it is, as I think I need to be because that was something they were dealing with. But when you're a child, you just don't have that ability to reason. You just don't know. You think that that's the way you're supposed to be until you grow up and realize, wait a minute, I need to take control of my own life. I realized that was their own issues. And unfortunately, that was something that was ingrained into my brain. And now I have to go in and fix it.
Yeah, what is your own thing and what are your parents' things? And that is hard to sometimes figure out. And I saw something and it was like, I realized I don't remember how they said it, but it's like your parents are it was said very different than this, but like your parents are also figuring out life, just like
Yeah.
we're figuring
They're
out
just
life.
as human
And
as you are.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I think that's overlooked a lot. And I think
It's so true.
I mean, imagine, like, when we become parents, it's like, we don't have it all figured out, like, do we want to? Sure, yeah, but, like, we're gonna be
Yes, you
figuring it
do.
out as we go too, and no matter how hard you try, you're gonna put your things onto your kids too, it just is what it is, and you can be working on yourself and doing it, but that is just you're always growing and changing, and, like, I feel like that's something that's overlooked a lot too.
Bryce's mom always says that each generation gets a little better and better because we are learning from the mistakes of our parents and like not in like a bad way, but like we take those things that they taught us and then we grow from that and it just slowly evolves. And I think that's really interesting. I'm like, yeah, that's I mean, hopefully people are aware of that. Like they're self-aware to be able to like, oh, this was something I want to help grow from rather than being like, "Oh, I'm just gonna ignore it and move past it," because that's not where change happens. I wanna ask you a question. Why do you think that men are less likely to do fillers and Botox and all of that compared to women?
Because I feel like and maybe this is something that I've just heard, let me know if you've heard this, but I feel like it's very common to hear like, "Oh, like, men as they age and get wrinkles," it's like I don't know how people say it, but they're always like, it, like, is maturing for a guy, and it looks really good, and, like, I like that. Where girls, I
Aw.
feel like, are looked at as, like, "Oh, you
It's
need to
like
be perfect still,
manly.
you're not." Yeah. Like, I don't know, I'm definitely saying that wrong, and I don't remember how I've heard it, but I've definitely
No,
heard it where it's
I
like,
get what you're
girls
saying.
are held into a standard, and if you see guys, like, as they get older, even in magazines, like, that I feel like is more common to see than women aging naturally.
I've heard this thing that said it says that there's nothing scarier than a confident woman. And honestly, I feel like that's kind of how society can view women sometimes. And so they throw all these insecurities at us and it can honestly like nothing's I mean, you see all these powerful women in the world, and I'm not man bashing in any shape or form because I do believe in the yin and yang situation. This is not that. But like I just see a lot of shame, more shame on women's bodies and women with their appearance than I do on men. Like people praise the dad bod and they say dad bod, like, and they have T-shirts saying, "Oh, I got dad bod," but where's mom bod? You know? Like,
Yeah,
I
no,
just
for
had a
sure, but
baby,
do you
mom
think
bod.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. I have a question though. Do you feel cuz I feel it's more women being harder to women. That's what I at least see. Like maybe not on the internet, but I feel like in circles and stuff, I feel like it's a lot of times girls are insecure and tear down other girls to make them feel less insecure. And maybe that's not as much on the internet cuz I know there's a lot it maybe is opposite, but I think in your actual circle, maybe not circle, but people you run into and stuff, I think
Like, people
that
you see at the
that's
grocery stores or, like, stuff like
I've
that.
I mean, even friends. I've had friends who tear each other down because they're insecure and they want to bring people like you to come down to their level. They do not like when you're more confident. Even like people don't like that. Most people, if they haven't
Right.
been able to deal with their own insecurities and be confident with where they're at, they like to bring you down. And I've seen that a lot with girls to girls.
That's so Interesting. I really feel like there's a fair mix of all of it
Yeah.
because, I mean, you hear a lot of people say like we don't do that, like we don't do girl bashing. We
Yeah,
boost each
yeah,
other
but
up.
that
Oh, that
but
reminds me. It's that is a, you know what? That's a really good point because when I was in Carmel, this girl was wearing this really cute like cocktail dress. She looked so beautiful. She was curvy, but I mean, she just looked so good. And we were getting in the elevator and I looked at her and I go, "You look so beautiful." And she just like looked at me and goes like, "Wow." Like and she goes, "Thank you." And her I don't know if it was her husband or boyfriend, but the guy she was with goes, "You have no idea how much that means to her." Uh we always see girls just kind of glaring at her and giving her like a side eye or like kind of scoffing off at her and I'm like he's like it's nice to see girls boosting up other girls and I'm like
yeah,
maybe I'm not a part of
that
that world as much because I don't have
it's
that
out
many
there.
friends, but I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, that is so sad." Like, that is the fact that and Bryce was saying, I bet you she was having a hard time going out in that dress and it was having a freak out over it and then decided just to do it, and then I said that and I was like, "Probably." I mean, I don't know, but it's just sad.
I'm so big on, like, making nice comments to people and, like, if like, going up and saying those things, and I think you see so much more of those stares and those judgmental, like, looks than the boosting each other up, and I think that's what you're seeing so much of on reels and, like, trending things. It's like, "Oh, we don't do this. We, like, boost each other up," and because girls have dealt with it for so long, Every th they're trying to make a new norm. The new norm is to not judge and not do that, but it is so much. There's so much out there. It's hard to always feel confident for sure, and I think that's where a lot of this can come from.
It's true. And you know what? To anyone that can pull off any type of anything, good for you. Like if you can rock whatever makes you feel insecure, that is huge. I think that's huge. Curious to see what other people's like experiences are with other women. Do you see more women boosting each other up or boosting each other
Tearing
down?
each
Is that even
tearing each other
a thing?
down, tearing each other down.
Thank you. I'm just like, but it's just like, I hope that, it's not the circumstances that we've talked about where people tear each other down. But I am curious. And also, what's your thoughts on fillers and Botox? Are you wanting to do it? Is it something you're scared of, something you want to do, or something you haven't really thought of? I'm curious to know what everyone's thoughts and opinions are on aging naturally versus cosmetically.